Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of A Warrior Spirit, where we let the inner warrior shine in their light. Today, I have the pleasure of being with Jeff Perdue Adkins. He's an author, he's an artist, and he's my very first Jedi Cleric. So I now have international and intergalactical guests. So, Jeff, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to do this, and welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Daryl. It's so great to be here. I've been watching the show and following along, and I'm just honored that you allowed me to be here.
Well, we all have a story to tell, and you have certainly a lot to share. So, um, Jedi Cleric is the first for me. How long have you been a self-professed, or when did you know you were a Jedi Cleric? Or
I'm not self-professed. I actually studied.
oh,
Yeah,
oh,
I am licensed through the Temple of Jedi Order.
okay,
It so around 2000-ish, a little before, there was kind of this push, and it was kind of a jokish kind of thing at first,
yeah,
where everyone on the census would put Jedi.
hmm.
And there were some like really revolutionary people that came together and said, what would it really look like to be real life Jedi? What would it really take? What would it really look like? And in the United States, it's a recognized religion.
Oh, wow.
Um, I can open a church tomorrow. I can, and because of my licensing. Uh, and for me, it's very much what I knew I wasn't Christian. So I had this falling out with the church way back in my late teens. I was back then I was winning awards for preaching. I had a full ride scholarship to Bob Jones University.
Oh,
I
wow.
grew up Southern Baptist. Um, I went to the school that my church had for a semester, but they wanted to, whereas the public schools wanted to promote me a grade, they wanted to take me back a grade because I didn't have enough religious studies.
Oh, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, just
Right.
no. Um, so it was just I knew I was called for something at a very young age, and I didn't know what. Then we got a new pastor. Now the pastor came in, and we had this older, loving, compassionate, amazing person that guided my most of my youth.
Hmm.
And then we bring in this younger guy who, thinking about it now, he would still be younger than me as I am now, right? Um, and he came in and he did the God hates fags sermon.
Mm.
At this point, I didn't know I was gay. I just knew that you couldn't say what he was saying from where he was saying it.
Did he actually use the words "God hates fags"?
Uh, pretty, you know what? At this point, I don't remember. I know it was the fire and brimstone. It
Yeah,
was uh,
Southern Baptist. Yeah,
Southern Baptist.
sure.
Like the full out. They're going to hell.
Yeah.
It's an abomination. It's a this. It's a that. But in the whole time, it wasn't even like I didn't know that I was gay. I knew I was different. I knew that I was.
And how old were you at this point?
I'm about 16 when I left
Okay.
the church.
I find that interesting. And the reason I stopped you there and want to explore that for a minute is because in my experience with people, a lot of people who are gay or identify as whatever that's not heterosexual, um, I find that they tend to know that like really early in age, or they feel it really early in age.
I was sleeping with guys. I didn't know I was gay.
Okay.
I I grew up in the 90s, so I'm pre Will and
Everybody,
Grace.
everybody
Right.
did.
Everybody didn't. Right. So I'm pre Will and Grace, and there's a
Okay.
really distinct difference between before Will and Grace and after Will and Grace.
Okay.
Okay? In the gay world, in the gay community, in the gay language. Right. Um, Gay was a word that was thrown around, but in my family, it wasn't something that you knew what it really meant.
Mm.
Right. It was. I was kind of sheltered. I was a church kid, you know. So
Yeah.
yes, I started sleeping with guys when I was 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
I slept with my first woman at 10. So that's a whole nother, craziness to unpack. But I didn't know I was gay until my year in high school when I realized, oh, that's what that means.
Hmm.
Oh, am I having sex with guys, or do I really have a emotional connection with that? Am I what they would call pansexual now?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Am I more pans? Does it really matter? Blah blah blah. Because I always had a girlfriend through high
Mm-hmm.
school, so it wasn't a question of not liking girls. I realized as time went on, I liked guys more. I had a better connection with them. Um, I was actually with the last actual girlfriend I had. Um, we were being intimate, and I was thinking about the 1984 World Series. And for most guys, it's a really good analogy. I
Yeah.
mean, I totally get the baseball analogy and all, but
Right.
this is in '96, and that was probably the last baseball game at that point I'd seen. So it wasn't a good analogy, and I realized this is probably not what I should be doing.
Yeah.
Like, this is not where I am. This is not what is this?
So you realize that you do have an attraction emotionally for men, and so that probably didn't go over well in a Southern Baptist church.
Well, at that point, again, I left the church by then
Okay.
because at that he did that speech, and I was like, you can't say that from there. I need to go and like question everything,
Right.
and I did, and I went through a few years where I questioned everything. Like I went
But here's
agnostic.
yeah, but here's like I'm sorry to keep interrupting you
Oh,
because
good.
you're just bringing like all these things to my brain. I personally think religion's the worst thing that happened to God. I think there's more connection outside of an organized religion than inside, oftentimes. Now, some people find it there and it's great, but I can sit on a beach and watch the waves and be closer to God than sitting in a pew listening to a pastor. So, did you leave the church or did you leave God?
I left
'Cause-
God.
okay.
I left God at that point. I didn't know for a long time. I was just nothing. It wasn't until after my brain surgery. So I had brain surgery in '97. Um, and after that is when things kind of shifted. I moved to West Palm Beach, Florida, and I ran into my first witch. Um, I talk about having psychics around me my whole life.
Yeah.
That was my first one, and heavy duty, real life, you know, not TV fake psychic. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Not Dionne Warwick.
not Dionne Warwick, and you're not calling in for the friends.
Right.
It was he was just his life was blessed. You saw it. He was my first law of attraction teacher, really, looking back throughout, you know,
Hmm.
um, and he was my best friend in West Palm Beach. And he said, and I'm like, how do you do all this? How did he was Wiccan. That was his. And he goes, you have to believe in something, Jeff. You can't just not believe in anything. And so I started at that point is when I started like kind of sort of thinking maybe something's there, right? And started with Wiccan for a long time. I kind of studied that for a while, and that wasn't quite right. But it wasn't wrong either. It's closer. I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
I could deal with this. I believe there's something bigger, and there's an energy, and we're all part of that energy. Okay. So fast forward, and I started dating my ex in my 30s, and on the back of his toilet was um, "Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life"
Hmm.
by Dr. Wayne Dwyer. And
Hmm.
and if you guys have it on your bookshelf somewhere, Take
Hmm.
it off your bookshelf and put it on your toilet. It is the absolute perfect read for sitting there. I mean, really, it is the best place to, because it's little itty bitty excerpts.
Yeah.
You're in and out, and you're great. And it doesn't matter which one you pick up, right? You can just open it up to whatever, and you'll get the message that you need to hear in that
Yeah.
moment. And it's when I started kind of studying spirituality more,
Hmm.
as opposed to Wiccan, and it was a little more organized, a little more. And then that's when Super Soul Sunday kind of started. Like it
Hmm.
was this kind of movement in this kind of area.
Hmm.
And then I started working with the Spiritual Life Center in my hometown because I was looking for somebody to marry my partner and I. And I said, okay, well, we're going to go here because he knows Oprah and blah 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 because he did. Um, and changed the, that day changed the trajectory of my life. I would not be here right now. I would not be like, I don't know if I'd be alive, but I definitely wouldn't be a coach, and I definitely wouldn't be sitting here talking about law of attraction, and wouldn't be able to talk about spiritual realm, and wouldn't be able to talk about half the things that is my daily conversation. But the very first sermon I heard from him was, "You are perfect, whole, and complete, just as you are."
Absolutely. Yes.
And I left there crying.
Because for the
Like,
first time you had a connection with your inner self and knew that it was okay.
I knew it was okay. Knew that I was okay. Knew that everything was okay.
Yeah.
Knew that I was part of something bigger. And I don't even know what the rest of that sermon was, to tell you the truth. John is amazing. He teaches from everything and everywhere.
Hmm.
Um, and I left there crying. And I remember he stopped me. He goes, "Hey, it was nice to have you there." And I'm sitting here trying not to. I'm really trying not to cry.
Yeah.
Like, but I'm like, everything in me. I'm like teared up like I am now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just putting me it back in there. And he goes, "It's okay. You're welcome here." And it completely changed. Like I said, I went every Sunday. I started singing with them. I started speaking. I started like really learning meditation. I quit smoking. I like everything I am now started from that moment.
Wow. Well, I know we've kind of jumped around because you have
Around. Oh yeah. So
really
actually,
you yeah,
that's a
go
really
ahead.
good spot for Jediism. So
Yeah.
I was it really, it actually worked. Wait,
Okay.
I can
Yeah.
actually answer that question now.
There you go.
So fast forward all through that, and I knew that I needed to take the next level somewhere. And I was thinking about going to Unity Village and actually studying Unity. They really want you to go to the village, blah 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 blah. That's like their preferred thing. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to pay that much, and I wasn't sure it was right, because actually Unity itself, a lot of times it's just kind of metaphysical Christianity, and I'm not Christian. Like, I just know, I believe everything he said. I really do. I don't believe everything around him and everything that. So it became a mess. Um, so I started looking, and I came across Jediism, and I was kind of just like anyone else would be. Oh, that's kind of funny, right?
Yeah.
And started looking at what they were actually teaching. It was like, oh, so there's an energy that goes to us and through us that you're connected to. So they call it the Force. I was calling it the time, source, or universe.
Hmm.
Okay. It took me a long time to actually start using Force. A long, long time. Um, I've been studying for 6 years now. So they had a really good actual comparative religion course that you went through. It wasn't just, you walk up and you get certified. There was this whole education stuff to it, you know. Um, and it really did teach me and train me into who I am right now.
See,
That's
it's
amazing.
interesting to me because again, you're the first Jedi cleric. I actually thought you were joking when you said it, and as most people probably do. But what's interesting is as I hear you talk about it, um, they've done a really good job of, as coaches, we talk about niching down, right?
Yeah,
They've really done a good job at niching down the spirituality to a certain sector who still believes in something, still needs something, and then they've kind of wrapped it in this Jedi cloak. But the principles that you're talking about and the things that you've spoken about are universal to other spirituality and other aspects, but they captured your attention because it captures your interest, and they just kind of wrapped it in Jediism.
yeah.
Um,
And really, what it comes down to it is George Lucas came up with Jediism. Okay, he came up with the religion, and it was much stronger in the original source. It was much stronger before. It kind of got watered down
mhm.
throughout the movies because they couldn't do as much. But really, he was friends with Joseph Campbell
Hmm.
and Alan Watts. Okay,
Interesting.
so he's contemporaries with him and um God, what is his name? Um Totally, like, all pretty much everyone you're thinking about when you think about modern spirituality,
Hmm.
we're all friends or
Wow.
enemies. You know, they're
Yeah.
all colleagues of some sort,
Right.
you know. So, and he was right up in that mix. So when he started doing this, he wanted to bring in that element of the monomyth,
Mm.
right? Because really at the core of it, take any religion and it comes down to a monomyth. It's pretty similar. You're going to have how you practice is different. And what I like about Jediism is that it doesn't have a defined practice that's so steeped in tradition that you're stuck. You know, I can pick I meditate every day, you know, but I also grew up Wiccan, you know, for much of my life I was Wiccan. So
Mhm.
instead of like thinking about Christian holidays, I normally think of cardinal holidays,
Oh.
right? So I'm thinking of right now, I'm thinking about solstice. I have a ritual for myself for solstice. At midnight, I light a candle for those who cannot see.
Mm.
You know, I don't, but my religion doesn't tell me I can't do that or I shouldn't do that
Right.
or there's anything wrong with that. That I'm going to practice this day. And the reason I picked that day is because that's the day that everything really is based off of. Because guess what? 5 days later is the first time you see perceptual light. You
Wow.
notice that the day is lighter. And guess how many gods are born on that day? 10,
Wow.
because it's the light of the world. So when you start talking about and looking at where some of these things came from, I mean, Jesus was born probably sometime in April, probably
Hmm.
closer to Easter, just
Hmm.
based on everything biblically that
Right.
they talk about. Like
Right.
it doesn't make sense that, but they took over the big winter feast. So all the winter things and Saturna and stuff like that from the Romans, which was based off of Mithra, which was based off of like Horus, you know, and goes back. So when you can pick and choose what pieces that you're going to practice without being told, oh, well, you can't do that. My family's all Christian. I'm gonna go to Christmas. I'll be at Christmas dinner and I'll probably wrap gifts and I'll probably give a gift and I'll be happy about it. You know, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm.
You know, I might not be thinking about it for the same reasons. And so
Right.
and I kind of laugh anytime anyone says Jesus is the reason for the season because he's not. But but I'm not also not gonna sit there and go, no, he's not, you know, to somebody. Someone's gonna say Merry Christmas, thanks.
Right.
Happy Hanukkah, thanks. Happy holidays, awesome.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. No
You know,
offense on it.
no offense on
Um,
it. No, nothing.
Were you spoke about your brain surgery,
Yes.
and what precipitated the need for that?
The night before my brain surgery, we all went out. And at the time I was working two jobs. I was working in the restaurants and I was working at the bar. One of the many, many times I had two jobs. Because I always knew I didn't want to be at the restaurant anymore. Worked in restaurants for 20 years. In that restaurant for 20 years. So we all went out to the bar that I worked at and got absolutely hammered trashed. I mean, stupid trashed. And it was the last day of I had a vacation. I was off for like 5 days. So I went back to work the next day and I was not feeling okay. And my friends all come up to take me home because I didn't have a car at the moment. And the friend that was driving wanted to go back out, and none of us did. Like, none of us wanted to go out. But I was sitting on his car hood talking to the other friend while my cook finished mopping. And he decided to put the car in reverse.
No.
So I fell backwards in my head on the pavement. Just so happens about 2 weeks before that, the Red Wings, our hockey team here, one of the couple of the Red Wings and the personal trainer and one of the coaches all got into a car accident. The personal trainer actually died in that accident. He had the exact same injury that I had, off by a millimeter.
Wow.
Okay. I had the same doctor. He died. He lived.
Wow.
The doctor literally had just done the surgery. He knew what he did wrong. Not wrong, but why it was not successful the first time.
Yeah.
Um, I walked out of the hospital.
Wow.
Um, I talked, it was hard. It wasn't normal, but I did walk, I talked. It took me 6 months to get to a fluid state. Like, um,
Hmm.
I was kind of like a toddler,
Mm.
and 6 months of therapy. Um, it's all crazy. Again, some of the reasons why I'm here today is because of that. Um, when there wasn't a computer in my house until I graduated high school. So me having brain surgery a few years later and not being able to read black and white, not being able to watch TV, and not being able to really tolerate radio very much because I was so sensitive. They At the time you can actually go into your browser and actually set settings,
Hmm.
and so that everything was um, you can control contrast.
Hmm.
So I can go online and talk to people because I can look at the computer screen at the time and do all the things. Well, that made I was in chat rooms. Everyone had a website on GeoCities.
Hmm. That's, yeah,
Uh-huh.
back a day.
Back a day. Back a day. I was in a WBS chat room, which
Mm.
became Yahoo chat.
Hmm.
Okay. And we that's kind of how I started creating websites. And that's another way that I've gotten here throughout my life.
So, oftentimes, not always, oftentimes though, when someone's had a traumatic brain injury, there's a significant shift in either their personality, their temperament, or their capabilities, or some combination thereof. Did you experience some of that?
I'm a very different person than I was. And people that know me before and after would say that.
Hmm.
Um, I was a really good kid.
By church
I was
standards?
by church standard, well, other than sex, I was a good kid. What people knew, I was a good kid.
Yeah.
Um, I was a positive peer educator. Um, I was winning preaching competitions. I was a, by all standards, I was a good kid. I didn't skip school. I, got good grades. I did all the things, I
Hmm.
did everything right. I decided not to go to college right away. Um, Probably one of my biggest mistakes is that I didn't do a gap year, like really
Mm.
did a gap year and
Yep.
went abroad and
Yep.
did the gap year.
Yep.
Um, I think that that's not that you need college as much as you did when I was going to college,
Hmm.
when I should have went to college, but that's a big mistake is that you don't do the gap year. You don't go and explore. You don't go and do something.
Right.
I went into work and I worked and I started that whole mess. So when after my brain surgery, they told me I couldn't go back to school.
Mm.
That it wouldn't be a good idea for me to. I went back and hit Dean's List. Um,
You.
they I started smoking. Like I stopped. Part of that is I was growing up too. I was like 22, 23, 24.
Yeah.
Like
You
so
stop
how much
living
of
your
that
life
was
for others.
right? How much of that was my brain surgery? How much of that was um, I have a severe, not severe, you wouldn't notice it, but my left hand does not work as well as it did. And
Hmm.
it definitely doesn't work as well as the right.
Hmm.
And there's a test to prove that. It's a Purdue test out of all the crazy things it could be called.
Sure.
And I have thrown it more than once. Um, but I was extremely, extremely lucky, extremely blessed. It's and I was called. Well, I knew then there was a reason I'm alive because there
Hmm.
was no reason for me to be alive. Like there really was no excuse of why I lived, and I had as little injury as I did. Not that I didn't have injury, not that I didn't have challenges, but people with my level of trauma typically have much more severe issues.
Hmm.
I didn't have them. I literally, like I said, I walked and talked out of the hospital. They kept me in the hospital for 3 days after a brain surgery. Like,
Wow. It's
yeah,
incredible. So what in this enlightened moment, because as you're sober now in the bed, because you were drunk when it happened.
oh
So
yeah,
so as you're sober in this bed going, WTF, how did I get here? When did you go, why and what is this for? And when did you figure out your next purpose?
years,
Hmm.
years, years, really. The funny thing is that I was legally drunk 14 hours later after my last drink. To
Wow.
give you an idea of how drunk I really was the night before, 14 hours later, I was still legally drunk.
Hmm. Wow.
They thought one of the things that happened at I almost got fired because they thought I was drinking at work, and I wasn't. I was just that drunk from the night before.
Wow.
Um, they had there were things that I was car surfing, and I was doing all these things. I was only out there for 4 minutes when it happened.
Wow.
Like we really walked out there. We were giving her time to mop the front. I was gonna go back in and push a button to run a report, and then we were done.
Wow.
So that's where the night was. I came when I went back in to push that button. I was bleeding out my eyes and ears. That's how I went to the hospital.
Wow.
Um, when it came really hit me, I think is because while I was in those 6 months when I was there was two people that were in the program that killed themselves. One had gone in the same week I did. He was injured at basically the same time, um, but he lost the use of his legs. He was a soccer player. He had a full ride scholarship to U of M for soccer. Then that night, when he found out, he went out and drank. They got drunk and they got in a car accident. He lost his legs. Um, and I talk about this kind of a lot because there's been a lot of people that has committed suicide around me. starting at a young age, my babysitter committed suicide. When I was in second grade. So what, six, seven?
Mm-hmm. 7.
Um, and I know that, and I've tried. I went to. I've had pills in my hands. Um, I've had things, but I know that at the end of the day, there's a reason I'm here, and I keep going back to there's a reason I'm here. And about 5 years ago, I was working with somebody when I first started coaching, and he said to me, "You called me, and I had pills in my hand. I was going to end it, but we were working together, and I dodged your calls, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to answer this phone because I'm just going to answer this phone." And when he answered the phone, he put down the pills. He never picked them back up. So if I could do that for one person, I, that's why I'm here. If I can get rid of some of the drama that they deal with on a day-to-day basis. So 2024 is drama no more. It's kind of my new theme and what my new program is all based around. How to get rid of all the drama in your life.
So earlier before we started, you spoke about feeling like you were called to serve the gay community.
Yes.
Why don't you feel like you're served to call the people like you just described that are ready to end it, but need your voice to not end it?
Many, many, many people in the gay community are a drink away.
Hmm.
I think that one of the things that, and this is not everyone, there are a lot of people that are well adjusted and living beautiful lives, but especially people that are my age and older ish. You know, we're talking Generation X, boomers, maybe the older millennials, but what they're calling Zennials these days, right? Because really they lived through all the same stuff we did, and
Mhm.
they were born in the '80s though, so it's
Right.
kind of one of those weird like, but they were just so happens was just a little bit on the edge of that, right? Um, in the '80s, the AIDS epidemic killed our elders, like the people that were in our community that were doing well and doing things, and sex was such a stigma alone. Just sex alone was a stigma.
Hmm.
Um, we were dealing with free will and grace, right? Will and Grace was groundbreaking because it brought a gay character in your on your television that wasn't there just for comic relief. He was a real person with real needs, not just a background player,
Hmm.
and talked about some of the issues, like candy coded a lot of issues. Now, really, the real groundbreaking show at that time was Queer as Folk, which was really what was happening in the gay world, a lot closer, a
Hmm.
lot more raw and real, right?
Yeah.
But Will and Grace brought it into your face. It was on TV and it was funny and it was done so brilliantly. And yes, some of it was really candy coated and some of it was really whitewash,
Yeah.
right? But it gave people an opportunity to have a conversation that wasn't available before that.
Was forgive me because I'm ignorant to the timeline, but was Will and Grace pre Ellen or post Ellen when she came?
It was post Ellen, but while Ellen was groundbreaking, she was in a trailblazer. Okay, because she really was the first one to come out. Her show ended the next season.
Right. I remember the backlash because she wrote it into the show coming out. She wrote her coming out into the show, and I
Right.
remember the backlash ended it. It didn't help that it wasn't as funny, but
It wasn't as funny. Her show was all right. I mean, I remember watching it.
yeah,
I don't remember, but it wasn't
wasn't Will and Grace.
it wasn't Will and Grace. Will and
Hmm.
Grace was brilliant. It was just a brilliant show. It would have been a brilliant show if it was four straight people
Yeah.
sitting there. It was just brilliantly written.
Well, it still holds up today, and it's what, 30 years later?
Right, 30 years later, the jokes are still good. They could go and pull it out again, and it would
Yeah.
you're gonna do it. It's Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
It's Brady Bunch is another one. It would yes, it's a little wholesome. Yes, it's a little very very
Yeah.
vanilla,
Yeah.
but you know it holds up. Married with Children, okay, same timeline. Married with Children does not. If you look at
Wow.
it,
No.
hold up at all. You can't say that. If you look at the first season of Law and Order,
Hmm.
you can't. Although it's been on forever, you if you look at that first season, I went back and was watching it because I was bored one day and didn't really have anything streaming. You can't watch that anymore. Like
Hmm.
you can't say those things. You would get like canceled tomorrow. Like
Yeah,
it would be
and I'm a lot older than you. I mean, there's a few shows that I think really hold up. Boston Legal, um, Everyone Loves Raymond, The Big
yeah.
Bang Theory, some of those. But I still think Archie Bunker, All in the Family, still holds up 45 years later. And you talk about groundbreaking, that was,
Oh, oh hell yeah. Archie Bunker again, he's the crotchety
yes,
old man
yes,
that is still there. He's a
yeah,
boomer. In the term boomer, like
yeah,
literally, if you looked it up and you could put his picture right there.
right,
You know, for all the reasons there, and he was played that way on purpose.
yes,
And I think that it was brilliantly done again to introduce these social issues,
hmm,
which they did, and they played him in such a way that he looked ridiculous though,
yes,
right? So you're fighting against this idea, and I think that nowadays we're still dealing with it. I mean, that is Magna Republican archetype, right? So, but it's not played for effect anymore. It's no, this is what I believe, and
right,
this is who we are, and this is what in the 70s we were laughing at it.
yeah,
Now we're not laughing. It's like, look, this isn't
yeah,
funny anymore.
right.
And some of this is downright dangerous. What's going on in the trans communities is dangerous. Like absolutely what was going on in the gay community back in the 60s, you know?
You, I'm not sure if you're old enough. My father and I used to watch it, and this was way ahead of its time. I haven't seen it recently to know if it holds up, but it was one of Billy Crystal's best characters on the TV show Soap.
Yes.
That show was so far ahead of its time and dealt with the social issues. And for Billy Crystal to play a gay character was one of his best roles that I've seen him play. Have you seen it?
I have seen it. But again, it was a gay character played for comedy,
Yeah.
okay, that didn't really have a he came in, he was the punchline and then he walked away. He didn't really have a real arc, he didn't have a storyline, he didn't have a lover.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't a person. He was just the punchline throughout the whole thing.
Interesting.
And that was the as a matter of fact, Golden Girls, their pilot had one.
Mm,
There was a gay man. He was the butler,
mm,
basically, and they took it out after the pilot because they realized that they were like, no, that's that Billy Crystal's character.
yeah.
Like they redid it, and it was and
So television is a reflection of where we are in society. And right
yeah,
now, I think a lot of TV is crap and junk because that's a reflection of our society. I haven't
mhm.
seen any, like in our area right now, Channel 12 is off the air because they're having a contract dispute, right?
Oh wow,
I wouldn't have even known it if Sunday Night Football hadn't been on Channel 12. It's been off for over a week. There's so much crap on TV, you don't even watch it unless it's a sporting event. Is there any is there any shows out there that are depictive of the real life, but not campy and in your face and all that other stuff?
Um, I think that they've done a really good job of integrating. I don't watch regular TV. I'll be the first to tell you I haven't watched a regular TV show, and I haven't had a. As a matter of fact, this is the first time I've actually had a TV in 4 years.
Yeah,
So
and you haven't
I've
missed it because there's nothing on.
no, I mean I stream, I watch, I stream, but it's not typical. I'm watching the streaming shows and the things that are based on streaming. I'm probably not watching network television.
Right.
Um, what has been good lately? I think that they are doing a lot of really cute things. Maybe not well, right? But I've also seen like a lot of characters. They have a when they have a gay character, they're no longer a punchline.
Mm.
When they have a trans character, they're not a punchline. It's they have a person. They're a person. They have a character. When they bring a black person on, you know what I mean. We're dealing with the same things. It's all the same when you talk about diversity. And my dad was like, I counted one day uh, how many black and gay and everybody compared to white. I'm like, Dad, watch now. Watch what's walking down your street. You know, now most of our newscasters here in Detroit are African American or Muslim or and he watches a lot of news. So yes, what you're watching is probably and he watches game shows. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. All right, cool. And but I think that we need that kind of diversification. We need to be able to see that kind of diversification in our society to start to have that acceptance.
Hmm.
I got to spend so when this broke down, I was in Tennessee. I was on my way back up from Florida. This broke down 2 hours after 6 hours after I bought it. So I was very upset.
Your RV.
My RV, my
Yeah.
motorhome.
Yeah.
So I live in a motorhome. For those, I forget that I'm not in my
Yeah.
audience. My
For
audience doesn't
those who
know.
don't know you.
For those that don't know me, I live in an RV.
Yeah.
And I have for the last 4 years. This is my third RV. The first one never made it out of Michigan. The second one went into some water.
Hmm.
That's all we're gonna say about that. Check me out. I have the stories. They're all over. Check out my socials. And I'll probably talk about it again real soon too because it's a really good story to talk about. But this one was bought with insurance money. I was driving back to Michigan from Florida to get it registered because I'm from Michigan, and I broke down and just on the other side of into Kentucky from
Mm.
Tennessee. Somehow I ended up back in Tennessee. I still can't tell you how this happened. This is divine guidance. If I ever saw it, whatever you want to believe, however you want to believe it. But I ended up just by my niece's house.
Mm.
So I ended up going to my niece's house for a few months while this was being fixed.
Yeah.
And New Year's I had to move, so I went to a hotel for a couple days because this was supposed to be done, and it wasn't. So he's like, "Well, why don't you stay with me?" Stupidest thing I did. 5 months later, it's still not done. And I come home. Um, all kinds of things happened, like in between there and there. But now been a year and a half goes by, and I finally have it towed back up here. Right. But what was great is that I was down in the South. I'm gay, and I might not be. I stopped being the rainbow gay a while ago, right? I think that at some point you grow out of the fact that that's the first conversation I have. I
Yeah.
think this is the most I've talked about it in a very long time, and I think that's because and part of that is that the people that I know that I'm called to serve right now
Hmm.
are gay. So I'm talking about my gay stories. I'm talking about the things that I they're all a part of me, but they're not. It's not even the most interesting thing I've done this week, right? You know, I'm also a Jedi. I'm also an RVer. I've also been, I've ran 3 books. There's all kinds. I've done 2 different art shows. One was international. I was in the very first international digital art show ever. Um, that was amazing back in 2003, right? So there's other things. It's not the first thing I lead with. It's, hey, I'm a homo. Um, but I do believe, but prior to that is that I do have to. A lot of times, someone will say, do you got a girlfriend? And my first answer is no, I don't. Oh, did she break up with you? No, he didn't. He actually died. Like,
Yeah, you don't want
um,
to lead with that.
right. So part of being gay is coming out constantly. All these different people and all these different ways. And are you going to talk about it? Are you going to not talk about it? What level? And it depends on what conversations you're having, obviously. It's not every single person.
Yeah, I
But
really hope we get to a point where we don't have to label anybody,
yeah,
because I'm heterosexual, married to my wife, and no one asked me, about that. Why do we need the labels to ask anybody about anything? And
yeah,
and what does it matter to who that person is? I hope society at some point can get to over this. I don't care if you're black, brown, green, purple, yellow, gay, not gay, whatever. Just be a decent human being. That's all I care about.
right. And what I got to see is that this guy's so one of the things I'm in Tennessee. I was definitely in Tennessee.
Hmm.
I was I was in deep red territory. Deep red territory. Um, and I hung out with people. Everything was okay. A lot of them knew I was gay. I didn't. Again, it's not my first. It is not the first thing I say. There was a time when it would be right, but it's normally when, hey, my sister, hey, you might want to date my sister. No, I really don't. Is your brother cute? You know,
Right.
those kind of conversations. It's not, but I got to have that, and we got to sit and talk, and people that were very on a very different political spectrum than I was.
Hmm.
We've got to have that conversation. Now, I I have issues on both sides of this right now.
Hmm.
Trust me when I tell you, Joe was not my first choice. He's still not my first choice. He's not done bad. I don't think he's done as bad as people want to say. I don't think he's done as good as everyone wants to say either.
Yeah.
So, there's somewhere in the middle. I don't think Trump was all bad. My problem with Trump is that was my same problem with Hillary. If everyone around you is going to jail, everyone around you went to jail, but you're not.
Yeah.
Eh. And Hillary was the same way. So I had problems with her too. You know what I mean? For the same reasons. It's a
I think the zealotness of both sides has gotten out of control. Not that we want to turn this into a political talk, but um, the one good thing that I did like about Trump was that he wanted to put America first in foreign policy and certain aspects, but his ego got so, like, I think his TV show, we were talking about TV shows, I think his TV show was the downfall of him, because he got to be too egomaniac and powerful more than he already was. And then the same with the Hillary side. You take this zealot egomaniac side and you forget that there's people like you and me trying to do our freaking job every day and not have to pay $7 for gas and $4 for a loaf of bread and blah 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 whatever, right? And that's on both sides. Neither side is good for us.
no. And I think that, well, one of the things that's happening now is, and you're kind of seeing it with the strikes. I think the strikes are actually have been good for us this season. Um, but a lot of that is that they saw an opportunity, that corporations saw an opportunity to raise their pricing and get record profits. And every single one, every single industry you can look at, pick one. you'll see that last year they had record profits.
Mm-hmm. And you know who didn't? The American people.
Exactly.
That's
So, and that's not and that's not either political side. That it's corporate greed.
yep.
And now, is it a bad thing that they're greedy? Well, we can have that conversation, right? And I believe that, believe it or not, out of all the things, I, I'm I'm from Detroit, so
Right.
a lot of times things come back into the auto industry. But one of the things that was actually really smart, not necessarily the best man in the world, but Ford, he he created a lot of standards that we fight for right now. You should be able to afford my product. Okay, my general worker on the line, my lowest paid worker should be able to afford my product. Start there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's start there. My general person that's working, should be able to afford my product easily. They should be able to afford rent.
Right.
Okay. Let's start at the basics. They should be able to afford food. And that's how he started his pay raise. So, and at that time, it was, I think, 50 cents was the big payment, but it was 10 times what anyone else was paying. But they had cars. So they
Mm-hmm.
bought cars. And every time they'd raised minimum wage, and I know that we didn't want this to be a political, I don't know how it got here,
Yeah.
but
We circle.
exactly. Every time we, every time we've raised minimum wage, they spend money. We spend more money, and there are more profits. Every single time. And this has been since I was 18 years old. It's proven time and time again. If you give Americans more money, they will spend more money. They don't save it. Very rarely does it ever get saved. They spend. We got all those um, stimulus checks and all those bonuses and all that stuff. We spent money. We caused shortages because they couldn't get things to us. They created whole new trade lines to deal with our supply and demand issues. Because when you give Americans money, they spend money. One of the people that was running last year, I think he's Secretary of Finance now. Wang, I might call, and I might be off. I will apologize in advance.
Yeah.
Um, he said, give the Americans $1,000 every month. We'll give every American in the country over 18 $1,000, and we can afford it. And proved it. Okay, the best thing we can do for Americans is give them more money, because what it's going to do is it's going to boost every other sector. Will be boosted by us having enough money and to give us health care.
Hmm.
That's it. And proved how it worked. And everyone was like, well, that's socialism. No, that's capitalism at its best. Really, give Americans money. Give us more money. Pay your lower people better. Yes, you may not make $1 billion this year. I dated someone who uh, was married to a vice president of an energy company.
Oh wow.
Okay. She made um her official salary was like 250,000 a year, and after bonuses she was making almost 2 million a year.
Wow.
You don't realize how ridiculous the difference between what they're making and what the people that are on the lines are making.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't, and not that they shouldn't make more. I'm not saying that their job is equal. I'm not saying anything like that. But you don't realize how absolutely unequal it is. That it is that didn't exist in the 70s. Like the inequality wasn't there as much in the 70s. Then, and that's the problem, is that the boomers all think that it still works, and even Gen X. Let's face it, we're on the end of that, right? And we think that the world works like it did in the 70s and into mid 80s, and
Yeah.
it really, really, really doesn't. It's not like starting like when I graduated in 95 is when it was like, oh no, that's kind of backwards. Oh wait, I can't afford rent. Oh wait. And now it's like the same place I looked at originally. My first apartment was $450. It was going to be $450 a month, but it included all the utilities. It was in downtown Detroit,
Wow.
which was a good, which was a good price then. Like it was on the lower end. And it was a nice, and it's a nice apartment, but it was a studio, you know, in Detroit, in an area at the time was not what it is now. Um, and nowadays I think that same apartment is almost $3,000.
Wow. That's crazy.
So there are reasons why we need to look and start being sane. We in I think that the reason why I'm working in the areas I'm working in is that people have to find their connection to that which is greater, to each other, and to get over that other that we so often have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's perpetuated in our society. And so once we can start getting rid of that other and get rid of that thing, one of the things I talk about, I just did a blog post on at the Orange Dragonfly Center, was how I'm working on a series on how to survive the holidays,
How
right?
to survive the holidays.
How to
That
holiday serenity.
that could be like massive because this is one of the most stressful times of most people's year, you know,
Mhm.
and I think there's a great need for all of that because we make it too chaotic for wide
Yeah,
variety of reasons.
fine.
You know,
And we don't accept we expect everyone to accept our boundaries
yeah,
while not accepting other people's.
yeah. Well, I know that you and I could talk for hours and we circled around a lot of stuff as we kind of wrap this one up because you are a very fascinating man and um, I could spend multiple episodes just talking with you. As we wrap it up though, I ask all of my guests, what does a warrior spirit mean to Jeff?
For me, it's been no matter what, showing up. Just showing up for
Hmm.
myself, for others. Some days it's only for myself. Some days it's that I decide to get out of bed. I've dealt with depression a lot, especially 2 years of dealing with an engine
Hmm.
in your home and couch surfing and dealing with that mess, and my brand falling apart because I wasn't on the road, my identity falling apart, and who I um, was so mixed into that. So really, just sometimes it's just showing up and knowing that the fight isn't always, it doesn't always have to be monumental. Sometimes the fight is just being there, showing up.
Sometimes the fight is just getting up and showing up. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've done an amazing job for this part of your life to show up, and I know that great things are coming for you. If you look into 2024 as we head down this new year, what's on the horizon for Jeff, and what would be something that you would impart to the people listening tonight?
I am so excited about 2024. I have never been so excited over a new year in my life. Honestly, working with I'm working with some fabulous and identifying individuals. So if that's you, if you identify as fabulous, really you're my person. Who wants to kind of get out of the mundane, to stop living that life that they dread and really start living life that you love. And sometimes it's having the tools so that you can do that,
Hmm.
right? One of the great things I talk about is that my life isn't always perfect. Right? I could tell you sometimes this month it's not been perfect. My dad's in hospice. My mom needs they want my mom to do lung surgery. My sister's father-in-law just passed away, who was close to the whole family. Life happens. Lives. That's what happens. You know, but when you start learning tools and having those things in your toolbox to be able to still show up, however that looks, and not kicking your ass if you can't show up the way you did yesterday. Because yesterday I might have showed up and I might have did 3 videos and I might have been happy and I might have, moved around and I might have went took dogs for, around the block a few times and, did this and this and this. And today, I might not have that kind of energy. And today I might have to come in and I might have to do some tech work and get something else done. And there's always something to do, and being okay with that energy flux, being okay and knowing where to kind of push through and deal without being this toxic positive person where you're like
Hmm.
everything's all beautiful and everything, you got to be saying this and this and this and because that does not work in the long run. You'll just
Hmm.
break down like I did. I had a nervous breakdown because of it. So, you know, again, lots of stories we could go through. But I'm excited about this new program. My new program is Drama No More 2024. We're doing this. The Creators Club is starting being launched in I think 2 weeks, which is going to be an accountability group that we're going to be going into some deep diving. And what's great is it's going to be affordable to anyone. I'll be able to work with pretty much anybody uh, on an affordability scale. I can't beat that. We figured out a way to make that work. Work with the Unleash You Crow, which just made my day. I have a new podcast starting on the 2nd called Tuesday Creators Talks. So even if you can't do that, you can actually get access to some amazing coaches. We're going to talk about a really interesting topic each week. And we're going to bring in a panel. So it's going to be up to 4 people that you're going to be able to get live coaching from, ask questions. And as we have these discussions, I, I'm on the road officially. I'm supposed to be on the road officially this weekend. It's not happening, but officially I'm on the road. Um, so I'll be actually on. There's a lot. I get to go to the Unleash You event. I'm going to be at Spencer's event, which is going to be amazing in September. If you guys don't know who those 2 people are, both of us do. Put a message down below somewhere. Um, so these, I'm excited about the events I'm doing. I plan on doing one myself, probably midsummer somewhere. And yeah, just really getting back to being able to help other people enjoy their lives again and really focusing on that. I got a new book out, Unleashing Your Authentic Self. Oh, that's right.
Hmm.
I released the book.
Oh, there you go.
The things that I forget.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's my 3rd publication. It's pretty amazing. We'll walk you through an actual way to release a lot of the stress and attention that you're putting in to unleash you in a different way.
Well, you are an amazing person with a lot going on, and I appreciate the time you carved out to sit with us and share some of it. And I look forward to seeing you in 2024, and together we're going to go help the people that we're meant to help and serve in the communities we're meant to serve, and we're going to do some great things in 2024. So I look forward to your journey as well. So thank you for joining me tonight.
Anytime, anytime we'll have fun.
Well, I appreciate it. Have a good night.